Good morning, good afternoon. Good morning in Nepal, good afternoon in Australia, and wherever you are. Welcome to this start of the elimination phase of the Inter-University Law Debate Tournament 2025, 8th edition. Today we'll have the teams and as well a large team as well of organizers. So I give the floor to Ms. Urbanova, who will be hosting the match.
Thank you, Professor Levent, and indeed, good day to all of you watching, and of course, primarily to our participants, students, and judges of this match. So welcome to the 8th final match, the very first one of this round, actually, between the debate teams of Kathmandu University, joining from Nepal, and the University of Melbourne, joining us from Australia. The debate topic for this 8th final is that the states must be legally obligated to accept migrants displaced by rising sea levels. Of course, we'll have introductions by our participants shortly, but just one short highlight. It's been 5 years of international rounds for the Hague Inter-University Law Debate Tournament, and it's been 5 years for these two universities joining in them. So congratulations also on this milestone as we pass to the knockout matches of the Hague Inter-University Law Debate Tournament. And the floor is yours, starting first with the Kathmandu University, Ms. Adhikari.
Hi, I'm Sneha Adhikari. I am third year, second semester law student. It's a great journey so far, and I'm looking forward to this debate.
Welcome. For University of Melbourne, Ms. Sweeney.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bella, and I'm also a second year law student at Melbourne University. And I'm also very excited to get into a debate on such an interesting topic.
Welcome. For Kathmandu University, Ms. Tapa.
Hello everybody, I'm Ojashwi Thapa. I'm a third year law and business management student in Kathmandu University, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. I'm looking forward to this debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. For University of Melbourne, Ms. Brennan.
Good afternoon / good morning, everyone. My name is Steph. I'm also a second year JD student here at the University of Melbourne. It's been a great journey so far, and I'm really looking forward to this match.
Welcome. For Kathmandu University, Ms. Karki.
Hi everyone, my name is Aditi Karki. I'm a third year student of Business Management and Law at Kathmandu University, and I wish everybody good luck.
Welcome. For University of Melbourne, Mr. Flake.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm a second year law student, first semester at the University of Melbourne, and excited to debate this topic. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. So in a short while, you should be able to see the screen of my colleague for the allocation of the positions. So we'll know which side will be defended by which team during the debate. And of course, after which you will have 5 minutes to finalize your preparations.
Yes, so I will share my screen now. Normally you will see a wheel. So normally you should see a wheel with the double flags and logos of your respective institutions for this match. So as you can see, there are two chances. One chance to be in favor, one chance to be against for each institution. So we'll activate the wheel now and we'll know which position will be allocated to which team for this match. The team will be in favor for this match will be Kathmandu University, and Kathmandu University will be starting with the first introduction, and the University of Melbourne will be against the motion. So it means concretely Kathmandu University will defend the position that states must be legally obligated to accept migrants displaced by rising sea levels, while the University of Melbourne will defend the position that states must not be legally obligated to accept migrants displaced by rising sea levels. So now you'll have 5 minutes to review your notes, and then we'll hear the introduction from Kathmandu University. Here we are done, so I stop sharing my screen.
Indeed. So the final 5 minutes for preparations are over. So for the debate, you will please have the view in gallery, and I'm passing the floor to Mitlal, who will be our timekeeper and host for the match.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Vernova. So just a reminder, we will start off with the opening statements with 4 minutes. You will be given a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left, and when the time is up, you will be given a red card. You may comfortably finish your sentence, but it's not recommended to start a new one with the red card. Okay, so starting off with the opening statement for the debate team in favor, you now have 4 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Honorable judges, esteemed audience, and respected friends from Melbourne University. In 2018, the president of Kiribati stood before the UN General Assembly and declared, "Our very existence as a nation is at stake." His fear was not theoretical, it was existential. Today, entire island nations like Tuvalu, Kiribati, and the Maldives are losing land not to war or political unrest, but to the rising sea. According to the IPCC, sea levels have already risen 20 centimeters since 1901 and could rise by as much as 2.5 meters by 2100. And as UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres warned in 2023, this could cause a quote-unquote mass exodus on a biblical scale. Against this very urgent backdrop, Team Proposition stands firmly in support of the motion. States must be legally obligated to accept migrants displaced by rising sea levels. Our position is very clear. International law already creates a duty to protect life. That duty must now apply to those forced to flee rising seas. In this round, I will show you why climate displaced people are refugees and why non-refoulement principle requires states to accept them. Our second speaker, Sneha, will illustrate that sovereignty is not a choice and CBDR principle binds the states. And our final speaker, Ojashri, will show that legal precedents for binding protection exists. Now, let us be clear from the very beginning, environmental migrants are not voluntary travelers. They are refugees in every sense of the word. We follow Alexander Vernon's definition of climate displaced person as he has explained to the President of the United States in his letter in 2023. People forced to flee due to slow onset or sudden climate catastrophe, such as sea level rise. And under international law, these individuals meet the definition of refugees. Let me tell you how. Under the 1951 Refugee Convention, a refugee is someone with a well-founded fear of persecution. In THIULDT versus New Zealand 2020, the UN Human Rights Committee affirmed that returning individuals to climate-ravaged countries can violate their right to life under Article 6 of the ICCPR. In Daniel Billy versus Australia, that principle was made explicit. States' failure to protect from rising seas is a human rights breach. Then jurists like Jane McAdam and Walter Kellin have argued that states' inaction in the face of climate collapse amounts to persecution by omission. This is echoed in regional instruments like the 1969 OAU Convention and the 1984 Cartagena Declaration, both which recognize events seriously disturbing public order as valid grounds for refugee protection, including environmental disasters. But even beyond refugee status, states are still legally bound to protect climate displaced person under the principle of non-refoulement. What is principle of non-refoulement? Codified in Article 33(1) of the 1951 Refugee Convention and affirmed in UNHCR's Executive Conclusion number 25. Non-refoulement has since evolved into customary international law and now enjoys the status of just cognizance as affirmed by the ILC draft Articles on State Responsibility. This means it is non-derogable. States cannot opt out of it. Courts increasingly link climate harm to human rights. Soaring versus United Kingdom found returns to degrading condition, including environmental harm, violates the ECHR. Portillo Caceres versus Paraguay 2019 held that environmental inaction breaches the right to life, and both judgment T123 of Constitutional Court of Colombia and AF Kiribati recognized climate displacement as forced migration requiring protection. This growing jurisprudence makes it abundantly clear. Rising sea levels create life-threatening conditions. Under international human rights law and customary legal norms, states are obliged not to return individuals to such conditions, and by extension, to accept them as well. Legal framework anchored in non-refoulement, refugee law, and human rights is clear. States must be legally obligated to accept migrants displaced by rising sea levels. And with this, I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathmandu University, for your opening statement. We will now hear from the team against the motion. University of Melbourne, you now have 4 minutes. Your audio, please. Your mic.
Thank you very much. And to the coordinators, thank you for hosting us and for presenting us with this opportunity. And we're grateful to the opposing delegation as well for the points that they have raised. We acknowledge the severity of this issue and its importance in the international community. However, as the delegation against the motion, we declare that to impose a legally binding obligation would be unwise and unsuccessful given the current state. We declare this because of 3 reasons. 1, imposing a legally binding obligation will not find favor and acceptance among the international community. 2, such a drastic response is actually not appropriate given the current situation. And 3, there are far better alternatives to address this issue. First, imposing a legally binding obligation will not find support among current international state actors. As it is, current international migration obligations have been challenged by states around the world. For example, just last year, in the United States, in the case Cruz Galicia versus Garland, the United States held that climate refugees are not a group that's sufficiently distinct to fall underneath the Refugee Convention. Also, in Australia, our home country here, just in the case A versus another, Australia has declared that climate refugees are not refugees underneath the Refugee Convention. We also see movements in places like Finland, where they used to have a more expansive approach, which could have allowed humanitarian protection for climate refugees. But in 2016, they have begun to rescind that expansive notion of it. Because of these issues, we see that the international community would not be acceptant of a legally binding obligation to provide acceptance for climate refugees, particularly those who are displaced by rising sea levels. Second, looking at the actual issue, imposing an international obligation would be inappropriate and disproportionate to the severity of the issue of people displaced by rising sea levels. We are not saying that it is not a serious issue, but we are saying that in the international community, it does not raise appropriate seriousness. For example, the UNHCR has said that climate migration often leads to more internal displacement rather than external international displacement. Hence, we don't need to take such a drastic measure, such as imposing a legal binding obligation on all countries around the world, where this could be handled in a domestic humanitarian sense. Second, we would like to say that this issue is not also sufficiently urgent. Although it was serious, as shown in the recent case with THIULDT, even countries such as Kiribati, who are threatened by this issue currently, still have 10 to 15 years, which the court found was sufficient to prepare and to undertake mitigating strategies for this issue. Hence, because it is not of sufficient international seriousness nor of urgency, we believe that this would be an inappropriate approach, imposing a binding legal obligation on states to attack this issue of displacement due to climate change. Last, we believe that there are alternate, more effective ways to approach this issue. For example, we could use soft law approaches, which have been seen around the world and have been effective in various ways. These soft law approaches respect the state sovereignty of states around the world and are much more likely to gain support. Additionally, states could individually work and within their regions to find issues and ways to address the issue of displacement. In conclusion, we state that imposing a legal binding obligation would not be accepted by state actors around the world. There is not sufficient seriousness, and third, that there are far better alternatives to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, University of Melbourne, for your opening statements. We now move on to the first round of rebuttals. Kathmandu University, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. 1, 2, and 3. If they choose to stand on sovereignty and declare that we have no obligation, we call upon the resolution 45 out of 100 of 1988 on humanitarian assistance to the victim of natural disaster. It creates a global responsibility to accept migrants, and it was later incorporated in Rio Declaration Principle 18. Likewise, the case of Hirishi Jama and others versus Italy in 2012, the European Court of Human Rights have clearly stated that states have extraterritorial human right obligation, including non-refoulement in the case of displaced person from sinking land. So this precedent is an example where liability cannot be excused by sovereignty. Now here the liability lies under the fundamental principle of common but differentiated responsibility under UNFCCC, where the developed nation and the rising economy in present context have differentiated responsibility to accept migrants due to these factors. Number one, historical and present emitters. Second, their capability, the capability of economic and biological, economic and technological capacity to take responsibility of the migrants. Now, even though the countries who do not have territorial capacity to accept refugees in their countries can take responsibility of this refugee by relocating them with sufficient amount of sustenance, minimum standards of life, and quality of life. This strikes a balance on shared responsibility of states to protect basic human rights who have been affected by rising sea levels with low emission. Let me give you a case law. Australia Tuvalu Filipino Union Treaty in 2023 is a precedent that suggests the mechanism to provide a legal pathway for climate migrants, suggesting that states have a duty to assist population from vulnerable nations. Also, it reflects a shared responsibility as Australia, as a high emission state, supports a low emission state disproportionately affected by climate change. Though CBDR is not directly enforceable, treaties like this have always operationalized it, and it's not just a choice, it is a liability. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathmandu University. Now for the team of University of Melbourne, you now have 2 minutes.
I will begin speaking in 3, 2, 1. I would first like to thank the opposing delegation for their arguments. However, I would like to address 2 elements raised. The first is that we disagree that this situation comes under the current Refugee Convention, or indeed that it should be in some capacity. As my colleague has pointed out, in the Arone Teusha case in 2015, it was explicitly acknowledged that this does not come under the Traditional Refugee Convention. We'd also like to disagree that this should be a situation. This is a very different issue than what the Refugee Convention was born out of and attempts to address. It was born out of a world war that was consequently changed to expand the principle, but nonetheless, we see it apply to situations of war, threat of death, persecution, and we acknowledge that threshold of persecution is there for a reason. It is ultimately a crisis solution, and although we recognise that this is a real issue that does need to be addressed, it is a different one to the one that the Refugee Convention attempts to address. For example, the fact that the rising sea levels is rising is dependent on the future of greenhouse gas emissions. It is not inevitable that in 10, 15 years, a certain number of states will be above sea level. The IPCC's CCC's own projections show that if warming is limited to 1.5 degrees, global mean sea level will rise about 2 to 3 metres, but if extended to 5 degrees, 19 to 22 metres is expected. So this shows this obligation is a worst case scenario, and we have long to go before we need to impose such a crisis solution. We also want to point out that just saying that the non-refoulement principle is triggered ignores the reality that the current system of accepting migrants who are fleeing and forced to displace is also one that is riddled with holes. And we see our own country, Australia, has a lot of issues with migration, especially migration by sea. We often treat these migrants and expose them to more human rights violations. So we acknowledge that just saying the non-refoulement principle or right to life is triggered in this case is not enough to merely jump to the fact that we're going to have a mandatory obligation to accept these migrants. Thank you.
Thank you, University of Melbourne. Kathmandu University, you now have 2 minutes for the second round of rebuttal.
Thank you. I'll be starting in 3, 2, and 1. I'd like to thank the opponent team for their arguments. However, I'd like to respectfully disagree with all of them. As one of my opponents mentioned, that imposing legal obligations to states, the states might not find it very favorable, or not all states will be accepting of it, which is true. I will not agree to a very universal fact. But then what I see is that we're looking for precedents. I'd like to mention that law is not a relic of the past. It is a living instrument. It is meant to meet the moral crisis of the time. And today the crisis is the displacement of human beings by rising seas. When millions of people were displaced after World War II, we did not wait for a precedent, we created it. In 1951, the Refugee Convention and the 1967 Protocol, it legally protected those who were fleeing the conflict. They were setting a very powerful example that when human rights are at risk, legal obligations must follow. The Gacinovo-Nagy Maros project, which is a case between Hungary and Slovakia, it mentioned that the court recognizes environmental harm as a matter of environmental legal concern, stating that ecological necessities must stand the test of time. My opponent also mentioned that the climate refugees do not fall under the tag of refugees. We have a lot of tools which are functioning. We have Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have 1951 Refugee Convention. We have ICCPR. We have UNHCR framework. And all of them are directing towards, they're affirming towards right to life, right to dignity, right for non-discrimination. And yet, states find it difficult to accept those who are displaced by climates. Why is it? Why is it that a refugee of water is less human than one of a war? And with that, I'd like to submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathmandu University. The University of Melbourne, you now have 2 minutes for the second round of rebuttal.
Thank you to the opposing delegation for their arguments. I would like to emphasize that our argument is not that this is not a serious issue and this is not an urgent issue that is going to affect millions and millions of people, but that our argument is that imposing blanket legal obligations is not the most effective way to address the issue at hand. The opposing delegation has argued that the motion is the answer to this urgent issue and that displaced persons due to sea level rise qualify as refugees under international law. However, this is not been held to be the case in key states such as Australia and New Zealand, where due to the nature of rising sea levels, these small islands in the Pacific are at risk of 2 to 3 times the rate of sea level rise as other states and are inherently more vulnerable, and therefore require that states such as Australia and New Zealand will accept them and that their domestic courts recognise that they fall under the definition of a refugee. However, this has not been the case. There have been over 20 applications made to Australian and New Zealand courts by individuals from such states as Tuvalu and Kiribati, where applicants have argued that they should receive refugee protection under the convention, yet they have all failed because the courts have consistently held that they're not differentially at risk of harm that amounts to persecution. And rather what we would propose is that there are many more effective alternatives that work on a state-by-state relationship basis to take, for example, and this would allow for states that are severely affected to cooperate on a one-to-one basis and allow for regional responses, which has been upheld by such UN bodies as the Nansen Initiative, and that the international community is better placed to take this proactive approach rather than waiting for a blanket legal obligation as the motion proposes. Thank you.
Thank you, University of Melbourne. That now concludes the rebuttal stage. We will now move on to the concluding statements, starting first from the Kathmandu University. You now have 2 minutes.
I'll be starting in 3, 2, and 1. For the conclusion, I'd like to start by questioning that if your home disappeared underwater tomorrow, would you call that a choice or a crisis? Today, we've shown that this crisis demands more than just compassion. It demands legal obligations. One of our opponents very confidently said that this is not a current problem. This is a problem that we will foresee in the next 10, 15 years. And this is not an urgency. Yes, sure, this might not be an urgency, but then it is predicted that by 2050, almost 210 million people will be displaced from their houses. There are millions of people who do not have a place to live right now. There are a lot of cases that we've mentioned throughout our debate, but I'd like to tell you a real life case scenario that was broadcasted in CBS News that is happening right now as we debate. There is a woman named Maria Take who lives in a disappearing village in Kiribati. She's one of the least contributors to carbon emissions, yet she's one of the most victimized person in the world. Yet lots of countries like the US, the historically polluting nations, they withdraw from their responsibilities. Example, US withdrew from the Paris Agreement, citing that they will face economic strains. If millions of people, as if millions of people like Maria's survival is negotiable. Also, the alternatives suggested by my opponents, they are not convenient, they are not efficient. Voluntary measures lack consistency. Domestic relocation is not always possible. Small islands like Kiribati simply don't have the inland to move in. Climate finance is very slow and it is underfunded. Hence, we stand for the motion, and with that, I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathmandu University. University of Melbourne, you now have 2 minutes for your concluding statement.
Thank you, and we thank the opposing delegation for all the points that they have brought up about this important issue. We would like to restate that it is a significant issue, and it is a serious issue. However, a way that we are trying to approach it is one that is practical and not urgent, and not a crisis reaction to what's going on. As we did see in the THIULDT case, there is still 10 to 15 years before even countries such as Kiribati will be threatened to resolve these issues in a different way. And that's why we are pushing for these different alternatives. The opposing delegation has mentioned that we should be seeking precedent through international obligations and binding law. However, we submit that we should be seeking precedent to move away from the inflexibility of international legally binding obligations, instead working through ways such as economic incentives, soft laws, and finding ways that we can be proactive about this issue rather than reacting so quickly in a rash way. Hence, we submit that the best solution to this problem that's going on right now is to seek through these different alternatives, a way that will be more agreeable to states, and find ways that even states of different capacities can join in, and states of different willingness will be able to join in and take part in contributing. Although it may be less consistent, perhaps, than a strict legally binding obligation, it'll be better to have lower consistency rather than have an unrealistic legal obligation that states will break because they cannot commit to it, nor do they want to commit to it. We believe that other flexible approaches, such as finding incentives to receive migrants, or finding ways to use these issues to increase cooperation between different states, will be more favorable to the international community as a whole, and will better address this serious issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This now marks the end of the debate. And yes, so handing over the floor to Ms. Urbanova.
I will be taking the floor. Ms. Urbanova is busy at this moment. So many thanks to both teams for this debate. Of course, the judge will be watching the match, so from now you are not under evaluation, so you can relax, and will be, of course, collecting your impressions on this match, on the topic, on the preparation as well. As you noticed, now that we are in the final phase of the competition, yes, we are so close. We are going to be soon, let's say, in the last stage of the competition. So this is the reason why the level of debates and competition between the teams is much higher. So now I will ask each member, alternatively between the two teams, the impression. I will ask Miss Tapa, what did you think about the match?
I personally thought that this match was really insightful. I could see the resemblance in the arguments presented by our opponents and the ones that we had prepared for against the motion. And yeah, I think during the research, I did learn a lot about the refugee conventions. It was a topic out of my academic syllabus, and I had not put much research into it before. But then I really did like participating here and learning from everybody who did participate as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Sweeney, what do you think about the match?
I similarly quite enjoyed the research process. I think in Australia it's a more commonly discussed issue. Obviously, it does affect the country, as we were saying, and we learn about it a little bit at uni, but I found that getting into the specifics of different aspects of the convention and particularly trying to come up with arguments for the against side, which we ended up doing, was a bit of a challenge, but it was a fun one. It was interesting.
Thank you very much. Miss Karki, what do you think about the match?
I think the match was wonderful. What I found most rewarding about this topic particularly was how it required engagement with both hard law and soft law instruments. We cited refugee convention, and I'd also like to point out the approach that the opposition took was exact approach that we were going to take. Even we had prepared counter solution as they had, so it was the things that I was preparing. It was the same thing, and they had even better case laws as well, citing case laws from New Zealand, Australia, especially that their home country is also Australia. So I think it was more insightful. For me, it was just research, but that is the reality that they live in. So I think that is a very fresh and nuanced perspective as well. So I really, really enjoyed this debate.
Thank you very much. Miss Brennan, what do you think about the match?
Yes, I agree in that it was a very interesting topic and obviously a very current topic of interest, especially in Australia. It was really interesting to see, especially through my research and all the cases, how courts had tried to get around the strict definition of refugee in the Refugee Convention to try and bring this obligation under other rights, like the right to life was mentioned. And it's just interesting how are we going to move forward from this? This is a very, very, as we've all said, it's a very urgent issue. And just provoking the question of how do we actually move forward and what is the best solution was a really interesting one to think about.
Thank you very much. Miss Adhikari?
I really enjoyed the process of researching and forming an argument because I think I spoke more than 10 people about this topic in general, over the week. So I got a lot of information, but at one point of time, because I could not get out of my headspace of this debate topic, it just became a load of information, and you really don't know how to dissect it into, what you're going to use and how it is going to work out. So I think this topic really grind me off the jar. So yeah, it was really fun experience, and I think one of my favorite topics so far from the tournament.
Thank you very much. Mr. Flake?
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed this topic and really enjoyed the debate. Thank you to the opposing delegation. You're really, really collected. And I was impressed by the examples that you gave. And it really does show that there is so much research that you could go into this specific topic and just keep going down several different streams, and it can take you a lot of different places, the approaches. And I think it was just really fascinating, and I enjoyed the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As well, I would like to send greetings to your coach, because those coach are supporting the different teams for all the years since the beginning. So Mr. Wayne Jocic in Australia, that has the privilege to speak with by video some times ago, and as well Professor Shreya Joshi, who has been coach for the Kathmandu team as well since the beginning. So many thanks, and I'm sure you are very proud of your students, respectively. And now I give the floor to Miss Lal for the networking part.
Thank you, Professor Laurent. It was really fascinating hearing both sides of the debate, and good job to both teams. So now moving on to getting to know the team members a bit better. So starting off with the first question, it's more related to your university. So what are the activities proposed to students in your university? So this may include field trips, legal career advice. So perhaps starting off with Kathmandu University, could we hear from Ms. Thapa?
Thank you for the question. Our college, it provides a dual degree. It is an integrated degree, so we're doing a degree of law but business management at the same time. So I think it provides a variety of opportunities, variety of competitions. We have a lot of moot courts. We have business field visits. We go to the factories. We see how products are manufactured, how it is sold off to the retailer, how it reaches the hands of the consumers, and where it goes afterwards. We also recently we visited one of the areas of Nepal, Jomsom, and we visited courts, domestic courts, we visited high courts, and then we learned a lot about different the geography of our country itself. We found out that the crime rates in Jomsom is really low because it is a female-centric place and everything is led by females. So we really get to learn a lot, and yeah, I think that's about it, about the opportunities that our college provides. And yes, about international debates, we get to interact with a lot of people, participate, maybe answer this question. I think all of this our university provides the opportunity for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thapa, for highlighting the immersive activities provided by Kathmandu University. Same question to the University of Melbourne. Could I hear from Mr. Flake, please?
Yeah, thank you. So the University of Melbourne, I've been grateful for the different supports that they have, both in the extracurriculars they provide, but also just with writing support, with learning how to write legally, and also learning how to approach careers, legal careers. They give us a lot of support in that. Regarding the competitions, I'm really enjoying this one, but we also similarly have different moots that we have, or different competitions which cover like different aspects of what it means to be a lawyer. Some of them could be like witness examination, where you're trying to find holes in a witness's story, or whether it be a client interview when you're trying to figure out what does a client want. And these practical sort of competitions can help us to learn practically different skills that are required in being a lawyer and in a barrister. And I am grateful for the support that the University of Melbourne has provided for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flake. Now the same question for Ms. Adhikari, please.
So our school is mostly about student-based initiative, and college just provides a platform of how student can engage. And so I think as similar to dance, it's a student initiative, so it's student maintain, and they regulate the internal internal debating and mooting programs. So I think that's our college works as mostly as a platform to provide the opportunity, but it's mostly student based initiative. Even if we decide to go on a field trip and we want an educational tour, it is initiated by the student and then accepted by the university. So yeah, and if we have to particularly talk about university based program, I think they conduct this yearly internal mooting, that they support student and encourage student to participate in mooting and career based clinical classes, which is procedural part of how NEP police system work, and there's a different um, class for that apart from what we learn in theory. So yeah, that is what our college has been providing us. Thank you.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, could we hear from Miss Sweeney, please?
I think, similar to what Isaac talked about, but also our university hosts a lot of lectures that are peripheral or completely unrelated to the subjects that we're all taking, and I found that to be a very interesting and useful tool to learn a little bit about other areas of the law that I'm interested in, but I don't have the time to commit a whole subject to, and they'll have very interesting people come in, judges or people that work in the profession, and that I think is in addition to what Isaac said, something that the uni offers that's very helpful.
That does sound quite intriguing. Thank you so much. Now, finally, Miss Karki, perhaps if you have a favorite activity. Sorry.
Just like Sneha and Ojas, you said, we had like student council, welfare council body. So we have executive members from like business club, economic club, academic club, and social club. The most recent one that I really enjoyed was the LGBTQ parade that our social club organized. So we went from our almost like a kilometer, I think, and we had slogans. We did face painting, and our university is situated more in a rural part of the country. It's a big university, but it is situated at rural part, so we cannot exactly interact mostly with other legal colleges back in the capital. So we do workshop for people in the rural parts. We also recently we had a running shield program. Like, we're really into sports as well. So I think our law school was second. We won football, volleyball, and Sneha was even in basketball competition. So that was also really good. We have clinical classes where we learn how to draft. And the other thing is, in Nepal, we have our official language is Nepali. So even when we go in court and argue, everything is done in legal Nepali. Like, we have every single word is in Farsi or Hindi or Arabic and Nepali into it. So we learn how to draft and learn Nepali as well. Yeah, and we have arbitration classes as well. And then we had industry visit because we're also student of business management, and we have guest lectures, acoustic night as well. It's really fun. Every 6 months there is some program from another school, like engineering or architecture, and we just go there and have fun.
Thank you so much, Miss Karki. And finally, Miss Brennan.
Yes, I'd like to emphasize what my colleagues have said, but just like you guys over there in Nepal, we do have a lot of student-run initiatives. Of course, we have the Law Student Society, which run a whole heap of activities, social activities, but also facilitate a lot of career panels. We have a lunchtime that no law students have classes, and that's when collectively they invite different, for example, firms, just generally different panels to come and talk to us about careers, about what it is like to be a lawyer. But also that social side of things. It's really good to get to know your peers, because all the time you'll be going into the legal profession together. So it's great to have those social opportunities. We have mixed netball, so similar to the sports. But also we have a whole heap of other clubs. So not just the Law Student Society, but students are able to make their own societies. So we have a lot of different, often very specific niche fields of interest. So we have like the Sports Law Society, just public interest. So we have lots of opportunities to explore further and interact with our peers, and a lot of leadership opportunities as well, which is really great.
Thank you both teams for highlighting the wide range of activities offered by both Kathmandu University and the University of Melbourne. Now, moving on to the final question, which is what are the stereotypes that people have about your city or country, either internationally or nationally? So, starting off with Kathmandu University, could we hear from Ms. Adhikari, please?
Okay, so I think Nepal is in a state where we're heavily influenced by the West, but there are another group of people who are still rooting for the legal, would still rooting for the indigenous culture. So basically, we're just squeezed between these two ideologies, and as about how international community views Nepal is, based on statistics and studies, Nepal belongs to developing country, and it typically means that we're poor, and yeah, there is a huge number of people under marginalized, and we still suffer from poverty. But I think Nepal being one of the most beautiful part of the world, I consider, because we still have a lot way to go. There are places beside Kathmandu which is really good, like untouched part of Nepal, like Rara, and recently people went for Mustang trip. I think these places holds different status for Nepal, and it's not just about international way of looking at our country. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, could we hear from Ms. Brennan? What are the stereotypes that people from your city are known for?
I guess the main stereotypes would probably be what people wear. So all the time people hear the word Salomon tossed around. They're a type of shoe. Everyone wears them. Collared, checkered shirts, super in. Mullets, that is a huge one. Very big in Aussie culture, but it's made a really big comeback in the last few years, which is great. And kind of ironically, Kathmandu jackets, puffer jackets. Speaking of Kathmandu, everyone owns the one with the green lining inside. So it's a lot to do with how we dress, which is really stereotypical.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brennan. I believe I've also heard a few of those stereotypes, so thank you for highlighting that. Now, could we hear from Ms. Thapa?
So talking about the stereotype of our nation as a whole, what I think, based on the things that I consume from the internet, I believe that a lot of people think that Nepal is or was a part of India in the past, but that is never really true. It is never true. Our nation has always been very independent. It was never colonized. It has been very sovereign. And our another thing is our armies are also deemed to be one of the bravest armies in the history of the world, because a lot of Gorkhalis have fought solely with a weapon called the kukuri against people who are maybe carrying guns and all, and still managed to win. I think that is the one stereotype that I find. Yeah, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thapa. Now, could we hear from Mr. Flake, please?
Thank you. I'm in a strange place to answer this question because I'm actually from the United States, and so I heard a few stereotypes. Some of them I'm not sure I want to repeat. But I do know that when I moved to Melbourne, I heard that the weather is a bit interesting and it's grey or rainy, or I found that it does have rainy and grey days, but we do get sunshine too, and so it's a bit of both. If you don't mind change, then it's a place for you.
Thank you so much. And finally, for Kathmandu University, Ms. Karki.
Okay, so when you talk about regional things, Nepal is really small country, so I associate the entirety of Nepal when you ask me this question. People ask me if Mount Everest is situated right behind my gardens, which is true for me because I am from a Himalayan region, but it might not be the same for everyone. And the other is that people think Nepal is really, really clean, which is not the case. Just last week, we were leading the charts as the most polluted city. So it's not as clean as people imagine it to be. And we are fighting to clean that as well. And I wanted to ask Team Australia, is it really true that the spiders are as huge as your fist, or is it just asking that question?
I mean, I could, yeah, answer the question. I did a bit of travel a few years ago, and it was really interesting to, like, every time I would open my mouth, everyone would basically ask me those questions, and everyone had so many assumptions about, like, where I lived it was sunny, and that I was like outgoing or funny, I knew how to swim, and that, like, the spiders. And I wanted to say no, that it's a stereotype, but every time I've left the country, I've noticed the lack of bugs and the lack of spiders. Like, it's so interesting. Like, I have spiders that live in my car, and like, they're my friends because I can't get rid of them. So yeah, not to freak you out, but that's kind of true.
Oh my gosh, lovely. Well, thank you for that. That was a really wholesome interaction, I think, between the two. Miss Miss Sweeney, did you have anything else to add, or was that all good?
That was kind of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, that was really lovely to hear from both sides of both Kathmandu University and the University of Melbourne. I really hope both teams stay connected via LinkedIn. And yeah, wishing you all the best. Handing it over now to Mr. Laurent.
Yes, thank you very much, and it was very nice to hear indeed this interaction. So that was the 8th of final, round of 16. The very first of all of them, there will be still 7 to go, later today and next days. Of course, the qualifying team from this match will be meeting quarterfinals, the qualifying team of another quarter, 8th of finals coming up soon. And as well, don't forget that there is a ranking as well for the competition. So it means around the end of this final phase, I will be already sending certificates for the teams, let's say, who don't get to quarterfinals, don't get to semifinals. We already sent certificates to the teams who were in group phase, so this will continue. And this, of course, contributes as well to the ranking of your university in the League of Debates. So your 2 universities are well placed because several years that students from your universities are participating. So that will be updated at the very end of the competition before next year, of course. But yes, so yes, we hope the best, of course, for the result of this match. I'm sure there will be very good grades. We will let the 3 judges assessing this match in the next days, and as soon as we have a result, we send you the forms, of course, before we post anything. It means the results, and of course the quarterfinals will come very soon. It means 7 days after we start informing about the quarterfinals match for the qualifying teams. So many thanks again. Ms. Urbanova, want to add something as well?
There is nothing to add. All has been said. Wonderful job, everyone. It's been a pleasure to see your teams over the years, and it's been wonderful to see your teams in particular this year. And we hope to see you to perhaps also engage further in the years upcoming, either as mentors or perhaps if you're interested, at one point you can also qualify as a judges. So hopefully we stay in contact, not just between your teams, but also for the competition itself. So best of luck, and it's been a pleasure.
And there will be a networking event. We had to do it after the 8th of finals, but networking event will come during the next days to be announced in advance. And at Wear a Care workshop to help students who want to get internship and jobs. So that is to be the first time we do it. So we'll tell you in advance as well. So it will come in May as well. So thank you again. Wish you a great rest of the day, also afternoon, rest of morning as well, and we keep in touch, and soon you will hear the results, very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thank you,
day.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
You too, bye-bye.